now it's kind of growing up as we go, but obviously he still made freshman mistakes as we all did in his opportunity or his shoes. But the guy, he's taking credit for all his faults, and I can't do nothing but respect the guy like that.
You got a guy like Jalen in camp who's played all this college football in his career, but it's his first time, obviously, with you guys. How much does he lean on players like you who've been in the system for so long and pick your brain and kind of get advice and stuff like that?
Kind of a lot, because he's more of a learner. When he come in and he never knows enough, so with him, it's always like, what do I got to do on this, and what are you doing, so, and then a guy like that, you can't do nothing but help. Me, I'm a helping guy. I wish the best for everybody, so with him being so open to me, it's great on my part.
That was wide receiver CeeDee Lamb talking about quarterbacks Spencer Rattler and Jalen Hurts, respectively. And that's a guy whose opinion I think has to matter probably the most outside of the quarterback room for Lincoln Riley, because that is your number one offensive weapon. And if he says that he gets a little bit more out of this guy than that guy, you're going to listen, particularly because CeeDee is probably not that kind of a person, and most players aren't. They don't really want to go stick their head in where they know they're not necessarily supposed to stick their head in. But if I'm Lincoln Riley, I seek out CeeDee Lamb, I seek out Creed Humphrey, I seek out what we call leaders, but guys I know that are going to influence the game in a very, very important way, and say, hey, straight up with me. It's me and you in the office. It's me and you in the room. Which guy do you like more? And you got to listen, right? Just be like, hey, don't tell me what I want to hear. Tell me what you actually think, because you're out there. You tell me what's going on. And I think that's going to bear out. Now, that said, CeeDee Lamb is much closer with Jalen Hurts than he is Spencer Rattler, right? And most people would put that together. They're from the same area. They spent spring break together, at least for a couple of days. They know about what each other were capable of doing in high school. They're both from Texas. Spencer, at least to CeeDee, is not necessarily a known commodity. And I think that's going to figure. But I also really want to know what Creed Humphrey has to say about these guys, because he obviously is not just your best offensive lineman. He could be your best pro. Like, that's remarkable. And to have that guy being your center means that the only dude touching the ball more often than the quarterback is him. And the only guy that needs to have a better sense of chemistry with the quarterback than the wide receiver is him. So those are definitely two guys that I would lean on, and I think that you have to. I don't think that Lincoln Riley is so good or so narrow-minded as to not only talk to his assistants, but talk to his players. Because that's the sense that we get from the guy is, yeah, it's his decision, but he wants to be clear that everybody that he talks to needs to know that he's listening. I really am interested to hear these guys talk more at length and less coach speak, right? Because we get tired of coach speak. This is a sport that is full of coach speak. One of the reasons that we love the games. Because you know what I don't have to listen to? I don't have to listen to Mike Stoops yelling at people about being out of position. Yeah, I can see they're out of position, dog. We all saw it. What are you going to do about it? Yell more? Cool. All right. I'm here for the yelling. But, Patrick, in hearing CeeDee Lamb talk, was there anything you picked up on?
Mm-hmm. I think that he sees confidence in both of them, in both the guys he mentioned. And look, and to your point, what I think is a good one about, hey, he's going to make the call. He'll listen to his coaches, and even listening to players, that helps your players feel like they have a voice. Now, look, obviously he has to make the decision, and I'm not saying that, and you're not saying either that, well, CeeDee thinks it should be this guy, so we're going to go with this guy. No, but if you allow your players, if you trust your players to get input, I think you'll get more out of it in the long run. You'll get more trust. Hey, maybe a guy like, we're all worried about transferring, right? Guys transferring. If let's say Tanner Mordecai doesn't win the job, which we expect, but he feels that, Lincoln Riley really listens to the guys. I mean, he still makes his decision, but he cares about what the players think. That might help get a guy to stay. That might help get a guy to see the value of himself there. So, I mean, that's what's an interesting point about what you just talked about, too.
I think it goes back to what I've been saying, which is the theme of being the guy in charge, is making yourself vulnerable to everybody else. And when you have an open-door policy, it needs to be one where not just people can come in and start talking about stuff, but they can actually tell you what they're thinking and what they feel, because if you don't have the pulse of your team, you're not going to be very good. And I think Lincoln has demonstrated that he has enough self-awareness and he's done enough introspection to be confident. And you have to, as a young head coach, as a guy that took the job very, very early in life, he had to not just get the respect of the players, which is one thing, but also the respect of the guys in that room that he works for and worked for, and now they work for him. And I think you could see how it worked for Baker, right? Because that was obviously, this is the difference between Cliff Kingsbury and Lincoln Riley, and this is me circling it back around to what I was getting at about, is Cliff Kingsbury going to work? One of those guys is much tighter in holding on to the wheel, right? Cliff Kingsbury wants it done his way, and the way that he says how he wants it done. He's going to be the star of this show, right down to, in his contract, he said, I want to be able to pick out what the uniforms look like. Okay? There are lots of head coaches like that. There are lots of guys that are maniacal when it comes to every little detail of their program. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, right? I'm off saying that one is better than the other. But I do believe that if you're going to exist in the culture that is one where you are expected to win and win often, it means having to not just put up with, but ingratiate yourself with personalities that are big, that are bold, that are not silent, but soft, calm. And Lincoln has said, hey, to Baker, what do you like to run? Let's run that. Whatever. I'm going to let the kid do what the kid needs to do. And I think as we continue to talk about his coaching philosophy as it relates to other guys, that's what I'm coming to understand and what I'm coming to like. Like I did this bit about Jimbo Fisher not being on Twitter. I'm going, all right, cool. If you're not on Twitter for the right reasons, fine. But if you're going to be the kind of person who's just like, you know what, to hell with it, I don't like it. You point to Bill Belichick and say he doesn't need Twitter. Yeah, okay, he doesn't need to recruit either.
Yeah.
He also is not...
Different game, yeah.
Right, and he's not really fond of telling anybody anything.
Yeah.
Whereas Jimbo is fond of telling everybody what he thinks. And I think that kind of sticks to your personality. Like, we can let Bill Belichick slide because he's the greatest greatest football coach of all time. And every time he steps to a podium, we're counting the words. He's just not that guy. I look at what Lincoln Riley's doing, and I look at how he's going about picking his quarterbacks, and I'm going, man, are you not just the best at telling everybody what they need to hear? Not what they want to hear, but what they need to hear. I mean, we talk about the podium stuff, but also the way that the kids talk about him. That's a rare quality, and one that I wish that we could cultivate and we could bottle, because if we had more guys that just had that kind of way about them where they feel confident in how they're going to go about life, but also feel so confident that they don't need to demean you and the way you go about doing it, we'd be so much better off.